Hey guys, tonight we climb aboard a pirate ship. But not the shiny kind from Hollywood, no, we're talking about the real deal. A creaking, swaying, half-rotten plank of wood bobbing somewhere off the coast of the Caribbean, stuffed with too many men and not nearly enough soap. As you step onto the slick, groaning deck, your nose wrinkles before your foot even lands. The smell hits you first. It's not one smell. It's 23 smells layered like an onion someone forgot in a wet sock drawer. There's a sharp tang of salt, sure, but that's overpowered by the sickly sour funk of sweat baked into rough linen, the wet dog scent of mildew, and something meaty you can't quite place. You don't want to place it.so. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough to type, let me know your location and local time in the comments. I'm always curious who's drifting off with us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You edge toward the ship's rail, clutching a thick, wet rope that smells like a harbor eel's armpit. The boards beneath your feet creak with every sway, soaked with seawater and something more mysterious. Something greasy, maybe fish oil, maybe stew. You hope it's stew. This is not a cruise ship. This is not even a well-organized bar fight. This is the living, breathing, festering habitat of pirates, men, and a few women, who worked, slept, bled, and defecated all within the same 100 feet of damp wood and swinging hammocks. Naturally, it stank. Historians still argue whether the stench was worse than a battlefield or just different, but one thing's certain, you weren't going to make friends by commenting on it. Not unless you wanted your nose rearranged. Imagine a dozen unwashed bodies packed shoulder to shoulder in the hold, with maybe 2 shirts between them. Pirates didn't do laundry. Not because they were lazy, okay, also because they were lazy, but because washing clothes meant using precious fresh water. And water was for drinking, not scrubbing your britches. You shuffled past a heap of soggy rope, nearly tripping over a wooden bucket that may, or may not, have held soup earlier. No one's quite sure anymore. A rat skitters by unfazed. He's smelled worse. The captain stands at the helm, his coat once blue, now faded to the color of a drowned pigeon. His long coat flaps dramatically in the wind, which might be impressive if you weren't so focused on the fact that he hasn't changed it in weeks. Or bathed. Or stood downwind. But even more intense than the humans is the bilge. We'll get to that properly later, but you already feel it, rising from below deck like some cursed vapor. The lower you go, the stronger it gets. A smell brewed over months of spilled rum, seawater, fish guts, and whatever the cook dropped on day 1 and never cleaned up. The cook himself is nearby now, humming a sea shanty off-key and stirring a pot of something gray and lumpy. He waves at you with a ladle, and you wave back politely while suppressing a gag. The pot gives off notes of cabbage, spoiled pork, and despair. Here's the first historical fact of the night. Pirate ships were rarely cleaned thoroughly. The Royal Navy tried to enforce sanitation, with mixed success, but pirate crews? Not so much. No inspections, no rules, and no incentive to scrub the deck unless it caught fire, and it could catch fire, easily. With all the tar, rope, wood, and dried fish scales, these vessels were floating tinderboxes. Which made cleaning risky, too. One pirate famously tried burning rat nests out of the hull, and nearly took the whole ship with him. His nickname afterward? Captain Singes a lot. Or so the story goes. Speaking of nicknames, you might earn one soon yourself. Gags at everything. Because everywhere you look, there's a new smell to fear. Like the row of hammocks sagging between the beams, home to farts, dreams, and the occasional chicken. Yes, chickens. Pirates brought animals on board to lay eggs, make milk, or be dinner. Which added to the smellscape. But more on that later. Right now, your head's spinning just trying to breathe. You duck into the galley, mostly to get out of the sun, but the smell is no better here. The cook, still humming, offers you a spoonful of something that's technically food. You decline? Smart move. He shrugs and eats it himself. Nearby, a pirate is scraping barnacles off the hull using a rusted knife. He pauses, wipes sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, then sniffs his armpit. He frowns, not because it smells bad, but because he can't smell it anymore. That's the thing. After enough time at sea, your brain gives up. Historians still argue whether pirates actually noticed the smell, or just became nose-blind. Some say it became part of the scenery, like the creak of the sails or the crashing of the waves. Others argue it was so omnipresent, it was like breathing inside a cheese wheel. You find a quiet corner near some barrels and try not to lean on them too hard. They're sticky. You don't ask why. One has a faint whiff of molasses. The other smells like onions and feet. You back away slowly. Above you, seagulls circle. You envy them. They don't have to live down here, and just as you're getting used to the waves sloshing, wood creaking, and background grumbling of the crew, something slaps your ankle. You look down. A fish. A dead one. No one knows where it came from. No one seems surprised. You're beginning to understand. Not just the smell, but the way it seeps into everything, your clothes, your hair, your dreams. This isn't just a ship. It's a floating jar of human experience sealed tight under the tropical sun. Welcome aboard. You stay put for a moment longer, pressed against the least sticky section of barrel, doing your best not to inhale too deeply. But the ship has no fresh side. The air moves in slow circles, heavy and damp, like someone's been boiling old gym socks just below deck. Which, given the stew situation, might not be far off. You take a few cautious steps, drawn toward the port side, hoping for a breeze. You don't get one. What you do get is a potent whiff of something sharp, almost metallic, and vaguely sour. It's the scent of the ship itself. See, pirate ships weren't built to be fragrant. They were constructed from thick timbers, oak if you were lucky, pine if you were not, soaked in salt water, splashed with tar, and roasted under tropical sun for months on end. It's like baking a sea log in an old fish oven. Over time, the wood absorbed not just the ocean's brine, but every sweat drip, spilled grog, and blood smear that ever touched it. Historians still argue whether the persistent tang came more from the pitch in the planks or the seawater soaking up into every crevice. Either way, once the scent got in, it never came out. You run a finger along one wall of the ship. It comes away damp. Not from rain. Just general ship wetness. The wood is swollen, spongy in places, and radiating a warmth that has nothing to do with the sun. You press your ear against it and hear the faint hiss of water, seeping, seething, settling. The ship creaks and moans with each swell of the sea, and you realize it's not just moving through water. It's drinking it slowly. 1,000 tiny leaks plugged up with bits of cloth, wax, or in one case, an old ham bone. Desperation breeds creativity. Now consider the salt. Everywhere. In your nose, your eyes, your teeth. The air is heavy with it, a constant invisible mist that never quite dries. It settles on your skin and makes everything sticky and itchy and just a little bit raw. It also gets into the wood, breaking it down, wearing it out, giving every beam and plank a gritty, grungy film you can feel under your fingertips. You pass a barrel marked fresh water and give it a hopeful sniff. Mistake. What's inside smells like a haunted well. Pirates had to ration their drinking water carefully, and even with the barrels sealed, the tropical heat worked fast. A barrel of water that started out crisp and clear could turn musty in a week, and flat out slimy, and some crews tried adding vinegar or lemon to keep it fresh longer. Others didn't bother, and just held their noses. You now understand the wisdom in that. Next, the ropes. Coiled in piles, draped over posts, looped along the rails. They should smell like hemp and seawater, but they don't. They smell like mildew, grease, and the hands of every pirate who's ever grabbed them, which is to say, foul.it. Turns out rope is an odor sponge. The thicker the rope, the more gunk it can trap: fish slime, boot dirt, bloodstains, whatever the cook spilled on Tuesday. It's all in there, braided into the fibers like a spice rub for bad dreams. At your feet, a hatch swings open, and a pirate clambers out. His hair is wet, not from a swim, but from the sweat dripping off the beams below. He fans his shirt as he walks by, unintentionally flapping a wave of scent in your direction. It's equal parts vinegar, foot, and despair. "Hot down there," he mutters. You nod. You're not going down there yet. As you continue forward, you notice something odd about the floorboards. They're uneven, warped like a cheap cutting board. That's the salt and moisture again, expanding and contracting the planks until they curl at the edges. The result: a ship that feels like it's trying to toss you off even when it's docked out. There's an almost sweet smell hanging near one beam. Fermented something. Banana, maybe? You follow your nose and find a crewman peeling bits of old fruit off the wood. "Dropped these last week," he says, holding up a pulpy chunk like it's a treasure. You don't make eye contact and slowly step backward. Here's a mainstream historical fact. Shipwrights in the 17th and 18th centuries knew how to build vessels that could float for years, but not ones that smelled fresh for more than a day. There were no dehumidifiers, no citrus-scented wood polish, and certainly no air fresheners. Once the stink set in, it was permanent. Some ships reportedly had such strong odors, dock hands could identify them by scent before spotting them on the horizon. And then there's the tar. Pirates sealed their decks and hulls with pitch, thick, sticky, black stuff that looked like hot fudge and smelled like burnt trees and bad memories. It bubbled in the sun, cracked in the cold, and oozed into your boots if you stepped wrong. It also smoked like a chimney when heated, which meant the whole ship could take on a rich barbecue tang even when no food was cooking. To keep their ships from leaking too much, pirates would sometimes smear extra tar between the boards mid-voyage. Imagine living in a house where people regularly apply roofing glue to the floors. Now imagine it's 95 degrees, there's no breeze, and a chicken just laid an egg on your pillow. Welcome to nautical architecture. Historians still argue whether pirates preferred certain woods for smell resistance, or just used whatever they could steal. Some accounts mention sandalwood, cedar, or even camphor-lined boxes in privateer ships, but on your average pirate vessel, the choices were pine, or whatever floated. You finally find a spot near the bow where the wind hits your face directly. It brings a fleeting breath of salt air, and maybe a hint of freedom. But just as you close your eyes to enjoy it, the wind shifts. Now it carries with it the ripe tang of bilge gas, tar, and wet goat. You're starting to wonder how your sense of smell will ever recover. You're also starting to feel oddly calm. Because eventually, the smells blur together. They stop shocking you. They become background. Maybe that's how the pirates survived it. Or maybe they just smelled that way too and didn't care. Either way, you're here now. And there's no turning back. You've finally worked up the courage to go below deck. There's a crooked little ladder leading down into the hold, and even before you descend, you know it's a mistake. The smell wafting up is like hot garbage stew with a fishy sidekick. You take the first step down, and it's already warmer, thicker somehow. The air has texture. As your head dips below deck level, you feel it pressing in around your temples, moist, stale, and pungent in a way you can't quite describe without gagging. You keep going. There's no going back, and there it is. The bilge. It's not a room, exactly. More like a dark, sloshy, sad excuse for a basement wedged beneath the lowest planks of the ship. It's the part of the ship where everything collects: seawater that leaks in through the seams, oil that drips down from barrels, blood from fish or men, and all the unspeakable runoffs of daily pirate life. Some of it drains. Most of it doesn't. The liquid down here is a sluggish, gelatinous pool that somehow never looks the same twice. Sometimes it's greenish. Sometimes it's black. Sometimes there are things floating in it that might once have had names. No one asks. And the smell, imagine 100 old boots soaking in dead shrimp juice. Add the sweetness of spoiled rum, the rot of forgotten meat, and just a whiff of unwashed feet. It's not just an odor. It's an assault. Historians still argue whether the bilge water was ever cleaned, in a traditional sense, or if pirates simply ignored it until it threatened to drown them. Some ships had manual bilge pumps, big clunky contraptions that required several men to operate, but on many pirate vessels, they simply bailed the water out with buckets. Slowly. Regretfully. Often while cursing. You're careful where you step. The planks are slick. Not just with water but with something oilier. Thicker. You don't ask what. A nearby bucket drips with brownish fluid, and you make a mental note never to sit anywhere ever again. The hold is low-ceilinged, forcing you to crouch, and the damp wood above is beaded with sweat. Not yours. The ship's. Every surface is a mix of rot and use. Crates of supplies sit open, half filled with salt pork, rock-hard biscuits, and what looks suspiciously like a headless eel. The odor coming off the crates adds a new layer to the bouquet, dry, earthy, and very, very old. You glance at the far end of the hold. There's movement. A rat, bold and bored, chewing on a rope. He looks at you like he owns the place. Honestly, he might. This is the heart of the ship. The part most people never see, and for good reason. It's where the worst smells breed. You get close enough to the bilge pool to see something bubble. It pops. You take a step back. Smart. Here's a historical fact. Pirates rarely built ships from scratch. They took them, merchant ships, cargo sloops, or small naval vessels, and redecorated them. That meant ripping out unnecessary compartments, slapping on a few extra hammocks, and often ignoring the already dubious plumbing. The bilge was someone else's problem, until it overflowed. Some sailors, especially on bigger ships, were assigned to bilge duty. They'd be sent down here to bail water, scrape out gunk, and, if they were very unlucky, unstick whatever had clogged the drain holes. No one envied that job. One crew famously rotated the duty every 3 days, because no human nose could survive it longer. You reach out and touch the wall beside you. It's tacky. A mix of salt and mold, with maybe a hint of whale oil. You pull your hand back and wipe it on your shirt. Instantly regret that too. The ceiling groans above you, and a bit of moisture drips onto your shoulder. You don't look up. You just assume the worst and keep moving. Now the kicker: sometimes pirates used bilge water, not to drink. Even they weren't that far gone, most of the time. But they might swab the decks with it, yes, cleaning the upper ship with the bottom's waste. Or they'd throw it on fires, cool down barrels, or, worst of all, soak rags in it to cover a wound. Historians still argue whether pirates knew how dangerous this was or simply didn't care. Some claim that a few ships tried to filter the bilge water through cloth to reduce the filth. Others say that's pure romantic nonsense. Pirates weren't exactly known for their sanitation protocols. The smell isn't getting any better. Your nose is staging a quiet protest. Your stomach is considering joining. But there's still something weirdly fascinating about this place. The bilge is alive in its way. Bubbles pop, ropes strip, and somewhere behind a stack of barrels, you swear something just hissed. A rat? A very damp ghost? No one's sure. You shuffle past a few hammocks slung low to the ground. These are the unlucky bunks, closest to the stench, assigned to the newest or most hated crewmates. You spot a few extra shirts draped over the ropes, stained, stinking, and steaming slightly in the heat. Suddenly, the trapdoor creaks above, and light spills down. Someone's lowering a bucket. Inside, more waste. You look away. Of course. The bilge is also where chamber pots get dumped. You're beginning to feel lightheaded, not just from the lack of fresh air, but from the sheer depth of the smell. It's layered, like a terrible onion. Every breath brings something new: burned grease, pickled meat, seawater, mildew, rat sweat. You name it, it's here, and the worst part? You're getting used to it. Your body, with all its fragile dignity, is adjusting. Because down here, survival means acceptance. And the bilge? The bilge doesn't care about your nose. You take one last look into the depths of the sloshing black water, give the rat a respectful nod, and climb back up the ladder, slowly, legs aching, nose numb, but alive. For now. Your head breaks the surface of the deck like a diver coming up for air. Only you've emerged not from the sea, but from the olfactory trench of the bilge. The upper deck feels practically minty now. That should be concerning. You stagger toward the mast, trying not to breathe too deeply. It doesn't help. Because even above deck, personal hygiene is, let's say, an abstract concept. The first thing you notice? Everyone smells. Differently, but not better. One pirate leans against the railing, shirt wide open, sun beating down on a chest that has clearly never seen a bar of soap. His scent hits you in 3 waves: old sweat, fresh sweat, and whatever he spilled on himself yesterday. Probably stew. Definitely stew. You pass 2 crewmen dicing on a crate. One scratches himself idly, then uses the same hand to grab a biscuit. You consider telling him, but what's the point? Everyone shares everything here: clothes, food, and yes, the bacteria that comes with them. Here's the fact of the night: most pirates didn't have spare clothes. Maybe 2 outfits if they were fancy. Some just had one, usually stolen from a merchant or naval officer, and already well worn when they got it. That means your shirt is your pillow, your hand towel, and sometimes your toilet paper if things go badly. Historians still argue whether some pirate crews maintained a wash day. A few logs suggest pirates might have rinsed their clothes in seawater on calm days. But seawater isn't soap. And drying your only shirt in open sun while sailing into a headwind? Risky. You glance over at the rigging. A pirate is hanging a pair of breeches up to dry. They're stiff. Not from starch, from sheer, caked-on filth that's been baked, sweated into, and probably cried on once or twice. They sway in the breeze like a warning. You notice a pile of what might be laundry near a bucket. Maybe this is the ship's wash station. You get closer. Nope. It's just a pile of discarded shirts that no one wants to claim anymore. Even pirates have standards. You spot a young deckhand crouching behind a barrel, scrubbing something with a handful of sand. His boots, maybe? No, his face. He looks up, red-eyed and gritty. No soap, he mumbles. Sand's good enough. It isn't. Soap was rare aboard pirate ships. Lye-based bars existed but were often harsh and hard to come by. Most pirates just rinsed with seawater or wiped down with whatever was available: rags, leaves, the corner of someone else's coat. And even when soap was around, the priority was usually dishes. Or wounds. Or trade. Yes, sometimes pirates traded soap away for more valuable items, like tobacco, citrus, or extra cannonballs. Cleanliness wasn't just next to godliness, it was several decks below. You pass the captain's cabin. Even his quarters aren't safe from the smell. Through a cracked door you glimpse his coat hanging on a peg, crusted at the collar, stiff at the sleeves. His boots rest beside the bed, stuffed with what looks like dried seaweed. Maybe for smell. Maybe just because he's given up. Now here's a fringe tidbit. Some pirates reportedly perfumed themselves. Not with rose water or cologne, but with crushed herbs or rum. A quick splash of alcohol and a handful of mint leaves, and suddenly you're fresh. For 5 minutes. Maybe you're beginning to notice how few people on board have any hair left. Not by choice. Lice were rampant. Shaving your head, or your entire body, was sometimes the only way to escape the itch. One crew even had a weekly shave and burn ritual, where they'd scorch their clothes over fire to kill vermin. Did it work? Not really. But it smelled like effort. You paused to watch two pirates arguing over a coat. Apparently it was communal. One wore it during a rainstorm, the other wore it to swab the deck. Neither wants it now. They drape it over the rail and walk away. The coat lets out a plop. You choose not to investigate. Somewhere near the bow, a crewman dumps a bucket over his head. For a split second, you think he's washing. Nope. Just trying to cool down. His shirt is still on. It sags heavily, wringing wet, and he flops onto the deck like a tired dog. Historians still debate whether pirates smelled significantly worse than naval sailors. Some argue Navy ships were just as bad. After all, they had more people and stricter routines, but fewer incentives to clean. Others say pirates, without the discipline of a captain's whip, let hygiene slide faster. Either way, you wouldn't want to play. Which crew smells worse? With your nose on the line, you turn a corner near the galley and catch a full blast of someone's armpit. He doesn't notice. He's busy singing. Loudly. Off-key. Through breath that could stop a goat mid-graze. Yes. Pirate breath. That's a whole category of odor. But we'll get there later. For now, just know that no one here is flossing. You sit on a crate, gently, because who knows what's been spilled on it, and look around. There's something almost peaceful about it. The constant breeze, the creaking wood, the way the light hits the sails just right, and then someone sneezes behind you. You smell a dot. That's the pirate ship experience in a nutshell. Moments of serenity ruined by reality. And reality here? It reeks. You're not sure what wakes you, because you never quite manage to sleep, but it's definitely a smell. Strong. Familiar. A complex mixture of old bread, hot metal, and something sour, almost citrusy, but not in a good way. You sit up, disoriented, and realize someone nearby has opened their mouth. Welcome to Pirate Breath. Yes, it's finally time to talk about dental hygiene, or, more accurately, the absolute lack of it. You glance around at your crewmates and realize with quiet horror that you have not seen a toothbrush since you climbed aboard. That's not an oversight. It's a way of life. The pirate seated closest to you is missing at least 4 teeth, the survivors yellowed and chipped like tiny barnacles. When he yawns, the air around him ripples slightly. You blink back tears. Not from emotion. Here's a historical fact. In the 1600s and 1700s, even the wealthy didn't have reliable dental care. Most people cleaned their teeth, when they remembered, with frayed twigs, old cloth, or a mouthful of ashes rubbed along the gums. Pirates had even fewer options. Some chewed mint leaves or cloves, not for hygiene, but to mask the pain. Historians still argue whether some pirate captains enforced even the most basic dental maintenance. There are a few scattered logs referencing mouth cloths and biting sticks, but those are rare, and likely only on better supplied vessels. For most crews, losing teeth was inevitable, and bad breath was universal. You take a walk, hoping to escape the human fog bank that settled around the sleeping area. But each step brings you past another open mouth, another snore, another waft of decay. You wonder, how does one man's breath manage to smell like burnt onions and dead clams? It's not just teeth. It's what they eat and drink and let sit in their mouths for hours. Which brings us to pirate diets, a lovely parade of foods perfectly engineered to destroy both gut and gum. You pass by a cook bent over a battered pot. He's stirring something that looks like bay porridge, but smells like fermented leather. Oat biscuit mash, he mumbles. You nod as if that explains anything. Nearby, a pirate pulls out a chunk of salted beef. It's gray. He gnaws at it like an old dog with a shoe. No seasoning. No sauce. Just raw effort. Salt beef was preserved for months, sometimes years. The salt sucked every bit of moisture from the meat, and from your mouth, too. Without vegetables or citrus, most pirates developed scurvy within weeks. Gums bled. Teeth loosened. The body began to fail. Breath soured into a compost heap of rot and acid. You glance at another crewmate. His smile is more of a grimace. Blackened gums, receding slightly, with one solitary gold tooth gleaming like a sad disco ball. And then there's the alcohol. Rum, of course. Lots of it. Pirates drank heavily, not just to celebrate, but to cope with hunger, pain, boredom, and the overwhelming smell of each other. Unfortunately, rum does not replace mouthwash. Quite the opposite. It dries the mouth, encourages bacteria, and adds its own sugary rot. Pirate breath often carried a back note of molasses and misery. One man is asleep in a hammock with an open bottle sloshing gently on his chest. He snorts and smacks his lips in his sleep, releasing a fresh burst of fumes into the air. It smells like someone poured cough syrup into an old boot. You press a sleeve over your nose. It helps. Briefly, the fringe fact of the section: some pirates wore scarves or handkerchiefs not just to look dashing, but to keep from breathing in their own crewmates too deeply. Not proven. Not disproven. But when you think about it, it makes emotional sense. You wander toward the galley again, hoping for a breeze, or maybe some fruit. Instead, you find the quartermaster sawing through a wheel of cheese. It looks soft. It smells sharp. He looks up, shrugs, and cuts you a wedge. It's okay. Better than the air around it. You chew slowly, letting your jaw work off the tension from clenching so hard earlier. It tastes earthy. Probably shared space with onions and boots in the storage locker. A pirate nearby belches loudly. He slaps his belly and laughs. You try to laugh too. It comes out like a sob. Historians still debate how often pirates actually brushed their teeth at sea. Some think they had a general sense of oral hygiene, rinsing with seawater, chewing rough bark. Others think the focus was survival first, and breath was everyone's shared punishment. There's one recorded case of a pirate ship's surgeon performing an emergency tooth extraction with a pair of pliers, a shot of rum, and what was described as a length of scream. It was not a sterile procedure. The patient later recovered, -1 molar and some pride. The wind shifts slightly. You lift your face toward it. Sea air. Real sea air. Unfiltered, untainted, for the moment. You inhale deeply. Relief. Until you hear someone sneeze behind you. Nope, you keep walking. The scent of the sea is out there. Somewhere. Past the bilge, past the hammocks, past the galley full of expired biscuit mash. Maybe if you find the crow's nest, you'll finally breathe air that hasn't passed through a dozen pirate lungs first. But for now, you settle into a corner, Wrap your own shirt around your face, and try to think pleasant thoughts, like lemon trees, or bathhouses, or dental floss, anywhere but here. The sun rises with a slow burn, creeping over the horizon like it's reluctant to look directly at this ship. You're already awake, of course. Sleep is a delicate art, and on a pirate ship, it's been thoroughly defaced. You stretch your legs carefully. Something squished under your foot last night, and you still don't know what it was, and decide to investigate breakfast. Spoiler alert, it's not great. The cook greets you with a toothless grin and gestures toward a crate filled with hardtack biscuits. You pick one up. It's light, dry, and just this side of fossilized. Tapping it against the table makes a sharp clack. You tap it against your knee and feel the impact vibrate up your spine. This thing could double as a weapon. Hardtack was the staple of every sailor's diet, pirate or otherwise. A baked flour and water biscuit, tough as bone and aged to perfection in damp wooden crates. Often they came pre-seasoned, with weevils. You examine yours. There's movement. You put it down gently, like returning a cursed artifact. Just eat around them, someone says behind you. You don't turn to see who that. Here's a historical fact for you. Food preservation at sea was less about flavor and more about not dying. Pirates didn't have refrigeration. They had salt, barrels, and blind optimism. Meats were preserved by soaking in brine so strong it could pickle a coconut. Bread was baked to the consistency of roof tiles, then stacked and forgotten. And if something turned fuzzy or green? Scrape it off. Probably still good. You step over to another barrel. This one's filled with something brownish and wet. Pork, the cook announces, stabbing into it with a knife. The meat slides around, gelatinous and gray. You shake your head. He shrugs and pulls out a piece for himself. As he chews, the air fills with the smell of old salt and boiled meat. It's aggressive. You feel it in your eyes. Historians still argue whether pirates actually ate better than naval crews, thanks to looting. It's true they could raid merchant ships and grab fresh supplies, but storage on a pirate vessel was limited, and spoilage was rampant. A cargo of oranges might last a week. A wheel of cheese, if hidden from rats and humans alike, might go a bit longer. But the bulk of a pirate's diet? Salted meat, dried beans, and biscuits that doubled as doorstops. You walk over to the mess area, if you can call it that, and sit on a crate next to a man gnawing on a pickle. He offers you one. You decline? Not because you dislike pickles, but because you're almost positive that's not a cucumber. Someone else is sipping what appears to be soup. You peer into the bowl. It's a thin broth, floating with chunks that may once have been vegetables. Maybe. The color is somewhere between fog and regret. Fringe fact of the day, some pirates, particularly those raiding Caribbean outposts, actually managed to get their hands on tropical fruit, bananas, mangoes, sugarcane. But unless they ate them immediately, those delicacies quickly rotted in the heat and were often swarmed by insects. Not exactly relaxing beach picnic vibes. You take a walk toward the forward storage area. More barrels. More mystery. You open one and recoil. It smells like death soaked in vinegar. A pirate nearby peeks over and laughs. Fish sauce, he says. You close the lid firmly and walk away. It's not just the ingredients, it's how they're cooked. Or, more often, not cooked. The galley kitchen is essentially a small enclosed box with a fire that everyone prays doesn't get out of hand. There's no ventilation. Just smoke, heat, and desperation. Imagine trying to simmer beans over a live flame while the floor rocks under your feet. Someone shouts about sails, and another guy is chopping onions with a cutlass. And yes, someone is always chopping onions. Even when there are no onions. You peer inside the galley again and spot something unusual. A pot of boiling water. Clear. Unsalted. You stare in awe. Tea, the cook grunts. Medicinal. You glance at the dried herbs nearby. Chamomile? Mint? No. Something called dock leaf, and a scrap of what might be tree bark. Still, you take a cup. It's bitter, smoky, and tastes vaguely like burnt grass. You sip it anyway. It might be the healthiest thing you'll consume all month. Nearby, someone is chewing tobacco. He spits over the side of the rail, not caring who's below. The smell of chewed leaf and old rum hits you a second later. You reel. This is the cycle of pirate eating: bad food, worse smells, and everyone pretending not to notice. And yet, somehow, people survive. Historians still argue whether certain pirate crews used local spices from their raids to season food. There are vague mentions of spice goat meat and pepper stew in privateer logs, but those could have been rare luxuries. For the average crew, flavor was optional. Calories were key. You returned to your corner with a single biscuit and a half cup of dubious tea. You break the biscuit in half. A weevil crawls out. You sigh. You flick it away. You eat it anyway. It crunches like dust. Someone belches nearby. Someone else farts with confidence. You can practically taste the air now. Still, as the sun rises higher and the ship rocks gently, you feel something unexpected, calm. Maybe it's the tea. Maybe it's the mild hunger coma. Maybe, against all odds, your body is beginning to accept that this is food now. This is life, and for today at least you didn't throw up breakfast. Progress. You linger near the aft of the ship, where the breeze is strongest, and crucially, blows the smells away from your face. It's one of the few luxuries aboard this creaking, floating sting box. But you notice something odd: a small wooden box near the railing. It's tied shut with a bit of frayed rope and emits a sour, almost medicinal scent. You give it a cautious sniff. Medicine chest. A voice rasps behind you. You turn and see the ship's surgeon, or what passes for one aboard a pirate ship. He's wiry, sun-scorched, and appears to be wearing someone else's coat inside out. Don't touch that unless you want to wake up missing toes. He's not joking. Let's talk about medical care on a pirate ship. Or, as you might call it, creative problem solving with sharp things and no training. Here's your historical fact: most pirate ships didn't have formally trained doctors. If they were lucky, they had someone who'd once seen a doctor. Or perhaps an ex-barber, since barbers often doubled as surgeons. Their skill set? Pulling teeth, sawing limbs, and occasionally bleeding someone until they fainted, or got better. Inside the medicine chest are tools. You wish they weren't. A rusty saw. A curved needle. Something that looks like pliers. And what might have once been a scalpel, now more closely resembling a dinner knife that's seen hard times. The smell comes from the cloths inside, soaked in rum, dried herbs, and something else. The surgeon opens a jar. You recoil. Leeches, he says proudly. Still kickin'. Historians still argue whether leeches aboard pirate ships actually did anything or were simply a nod to mainland practices. Either way, if someone got a fever or swelling, out came the leeches. If they lived, hooray. If not, well, there's always more pirates. You ask if there's anything for headaches. He digs through the chest and hands you a leaf. Chew this. Or don't. You'll forget your head hurts once your stomach joins in. You pocket the leaf for now. Maybe later. A nearby hammock creaks as its occupant shifts. You notice his arm is wrapped in dirty linen, stained dark red. The smell coming from it is rich and earthy, tinged with something metallic and sour. The surgeon notices too. Ah. That's Petey. Shot in the elbow. We poured hot tar on it. You stare. Stops the bleeding, he explains. Kills the pain. Or at least the nerves. Sometimes both. Hot tar. On open wounds. That's not a myth. It was actually done, especially in desperate conditions. The searing heat cauterized the flesh and temporarily dulled the agony. Temporarily, Petey groans. You decide not to ask any more questions. There's a dark stain on the deck nearby. Blood, obviously. It's half mopped, but the iron tang still rises with the sun's warmth. You wonder how many wounds bled out right here. You wonder how many of them were treated. You wander over to a line where clothes are drying. Several of them are torn, burned, or crusted with old gore. A shirt sleeve flaps gently in the breeze, no longer attached to a full shirt, or perhaps to a full pirate. Let's not forget boils and sores. The crew is full of them. One pirate scratches at a rash on his neck, openly, unashamed, and with gusto. You look away before he asks you to inspect it. Fringe tidbit time. Some pirates believed in bad air as the cause of illness, what we now call miasma theory. To counteract this, they'd hang garlic in their hammocks, rub vinegar on their skin, or burn herbs in the galley. One journal even mentioned stuffing pockets with dried orange peels. All ineffective. All smelled terrible. You climb up to the poop deck, hoping for fewer wounds and more distance. A pirate nearby is plucking a tooth from his mouth with a knife. It pops free with a sound you will never unhear. He holds it up, inspects it, and tosses it overboard like an old olive pit. Been loose for a week, he explains, grinning with a new gap. Got another one on deck. You thank him for sharing and step quietly away. Historians still debate whether pirates died more often from wounds or infection. The smart money's on infection. A minor cut could fester within days. A splinter could go septic. And with no refrigeration, no antibiotics, and a crew that washed only when it rained, your odds weren't great. Yet somehow, people survived. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was rum. Maybe it was sheer stubbornness. Or maybe the ocean air diluted just enough of the horror to keep going. You pass a mirror nailed to a post, a dull shard of polished metal. You look at your face. You look tired. You look salty. You look pirate adjacent. There's a smear on your cheek you don't remember getting. You wipe it off. It smells faintly of blood and herbs. Below deck, someone screams. Above deck, someone laughs. The ship rolls gently with the waves. You take a deep breath. Smells like tar, sweat, and faintly of mint, probably from that leaf you never chewed. You tuck it behind your ear and smile. You'll survive. Probably. You lean against the mast, trying to process everything you've just witnessed in the surgeon's corner of hell. Your nostrils still sting with the cocktail of herbs, blood, and tar. You need a distraction, something mundane. Maybe chores, yes. Pirates had chores. You can't run a ship on good vibes and cannonballs alone. You start to notice the signs of routine. A man swabbing the deck with grim determination and what you hope is clean seawater. Another patching a sail with large, clumsy stitches. A third crewman just staring at a rope like it personally offended him. Here's your historical fact. Pirate ships ran on surprisingly structured systems of labor. While the myth paints pirates as chaotic rebels, most crews had detailed, if unwritten, divisions of work. Deckhands, riggers, gunners, cooks, carpenters, all with rotating duties. Everyone pulled their weight. Or they were encouraged to, with knives. Your current observer, the rope layer guy, suddenly springs into action, recoiling, hauling, tying something off. He's a rigger, responsible for the sails and all those chaotic webworks of rope that keep the ship upright and moving. The ropes themselves? Oh, they stink. Like damp barns and overused armpits. But more on that later. Near the stern, Someone is hammering. Loud, methodical clinks echo across the deck. He's the carpenter, and he's currently trying to convince a warped plank to behave. With a mallet. And some language that could peel barnacles off the hull. Carpenters were vital on pirate ships. Not just for repairs, but for plugging holes, building makeshift crutches, or even constructing gallows, depending on the ship's vibe that week. No carpenter? No ship. No ship? Well, then you're just a gang of wet bandits with no transportation. You move toward the gun deck. Cannons. Big, loud, soot-stained beasts that demand constant attention. One pirate is scrubbing out a barrel with a long, stiff brush that looks like it once belonged to a witch. Another is rolling powder kegs into place, wiping sweat from his brow every few seconds with a filthy rag that might be more bacteria than cloth. And yes, the gunpowder has a smell. Acrid, metallic, and a little bit spicy. Like lightning that forgot how to behave. Historians still argue whether pirate ships maintain better cannons than naval ships, since they often looted the best gear. Some say pirates valued speed and surprise over heavy firepower. Others argue that a well-maintained cannon could scare a merchant ship into surrender without firing a shot. Regardless, the gunners took their job seriously. Mostly, someone yells from above. A man in the crow's nest points toward a speck on the horizon. Another pirate dashes across the deck, knocking over a bucket of what was definitely not just water. The crew jolts into a flurry of motion. Ropes halt. Orders shouted. Sails unfurled. It smells like excitement. And sweat. And hot tar. You duck as a sail drops too low, and someone apologizes by throwing you a dry biscuit. You decide not to ask where it came from. Fringe tidbit: during idle periods, pirates often mended their own clothes. It's not glamorous, but torn shirts and split breeches are a liability during a fight or a storm. Sewing was a group affair, sometimes done shirtless in the sun, everyone grumbling, half naked, and stabbing their fingers repeatedly. You walk past a pair of men doing just that, arguing over who gets the last needle. It's easy to assume pirate life was all looting and laughing, but the truth is, most of it was hard work. Dirty, smelly, unrelenting hard work. Keeping the sails trimmed. Keeping the deck clean enough not to rot out from under your feet. Keeping the rats out of the grain barrels. Keeping the ship together with nails, rope, tar, and willpower. Even the cook has his tasks beyond boiling nightmares into stew. Today, he's drying herbs on a tarp. They look slightly less dead than usual. You see a sprig of rosemary, some strange red flakes, and something that may or may not be moss. Still, it's an attempt at flavor. You're impressed. And suspicious. You notice a pirate polishing a cutlass with a greasy cloth. The blade glints in the sun. He doesn't look like he's expecting to use it today, but you can never be sure. Pirates kept their weapons ready, even in peaceful weeks at sea. You'd be amazed how fast boredom can turn into brawling. A bucket sloshes near your foot. A young swabby is cleaning the deck, humming something tuneless. The water turns brown on contact. He dumps it overboard and starts again. That smell? Rotting seaweed and old soap. Or maybe fish. Or maybe he is the soap. You stop thinking about it. Still, there's a strange harmony to the chaos. Each pirate, begrudgingly or proudly, has their place. The crew operates on a rhythm, jerky, loud, and often interrupted by sneezes, but a rhythm nonetheless. The air, somehow, seems clearer up here. Maybe your nose is finally broken. Maybe you're adjusting. Maybe the breeze is working in your favor. But for a moment, with the sails flapping, the ropes creaking, and everyone yelling like it's perfectly normal, you feel something weird. You feel useful. Not clean, not comfortable, but strangely okay. You wipe your hands on your already filthy shirt and grab a rope. You're part of the stink now. By now, your senses are dulled. You've acclimated to the salt, the sweat, the stink. The air still hits your nose with odd combinations: leather, fish oil, someone's breakfast revisited, but it no longer sends you reeling. Instead, you start to notice new things. Stranger things. Because while the smells of pirate life are bad, the superstitions are weirder. And yes, they smell too. You're leaning against the rail when you notice a bundle tied to the mast. It looks like dried flowers, maybe herbs, bound together with a thin bit of red string. There's also a piece of fabric tucked into the knot, frayed and stained. What's this? You ask the nearest pirate. He shrugs. Keeps the storms away. Naturally. Here's your historical fact. Pirate crews were deeply superstitious, and many rituals were olfactory experiences, whether they meant to be or not. Hanging herbs, burning hair, smearing fish guts on the hull. It was all part of the job, or at least part of keeping the sea spirits happy. You take a closer sniff. The herb bundle reeks of mildew, old rum, and something that might have once been thyme. There's a faint sweetness, like decaying oranges. You step back. Above you, tied to the rigging, hangs a small pouch, animal skin, stitched shut with coarse thread. It spins lazily in the wind. A charm, someone says. Which woman back in Nassau made it? Keeps the ship from sinking. You ask what's inside. Don't ask. Fringe tidbit time. Some pirates carried dried toads in pouches as protective talismans. Others swore by wearing certain colors on specific days: blue on Thursdays, red for battle, green never. Superstitions varied by region, by crew, by whatever mood the sea was in. The odors that accompanied these rituals were often memorable. One pirate insists on burning clumps of hair before a voyage. His own, other people's, he's not picky. The smell lingers in the corners of the ship like a forgotten campfire made of regrets. Another swears by keeping garlic cloves in his boots. You can smell him coming long before you see him. Historians still argue whether these practices were sincerely believed or simply morale boosters, small, smelly rituals that gave pirates a sense of control in an otherwise chaotic life. Considering how many of them included rotting plants, dead animals, and pungent oils, the line between faith and funk was very thin. You wander to the galley, where someone is grinding dried herbs with a rock. Not for cooking, oh no, but for a cleansing powder he plans to sprinkle over his hammock. The smell is somewhere between burned sage and sweaty feet. He waves a hand through the cloud and breathes deeply. Clears the air, he says. You smile politely and leave. Then there's the "don't wash before a raid" rule. You overhear it in passing. A group of pirates sharing a bottle, comparing smells. No, you don't clean before battle, one insists. Bad luck. Another nods sagely. You wash, you die. You blink. So, you all go into battle smelling like this, on purpose? They grin. One lifts an arm, proudly. You reel. You take a moment by the railing to breathe the sea air. The ocean has its own scent, briny, fresh, ancient. It's the only thing on this ship that smells remotely like life instead of decay. You look down and see something tied to the ship's hull, just above the waterline. It's a fish skeleton, bleached white and dangling from a string. You raise a brow. That for good luck too? Nah, someone says. That one's to scare off sea monsters. Ah, of course. And then there's the smell you can't identify. It hangs in the air at odd moments, thick, smoky, sweet but sharp. You track it to a small altar in a corner of the hold, behind a barrel of gunpowder, which seems like a poor location choice. There, tucked into the shadows, are burned candles, ash, and a handful of coins. A tiny carved figurine stares at you with hollow eyes. One pirate kneels there sometimes. You watch him from a distance. He lights something, herbs, cloth, maybe a bone, and breathes in the smoke. He never speaks. Just lights, breathes, and leaves. You ask another crewman what it is. He's got his own gods, is the only answer you get. These little shrines, smells, and talismans? They're everywhere. Some in plain sight, others tucked into hammocks, under booths, between the pages of logbooks. Each has its scent, its story, its silent believer. One man rubs crushed mint on his wrists before night watch. Another ties red thread around his finger, and never explains why. Someone whispers to a seashell every morning and dunks it in rum before tucking it back in his coat. The ship creaks. The wind shifts. You catch another wave of burned herbs, and honestly, it's not the worst smell anymore, because here, in this floating menagerie of faith, fungus, and folklore, these rituals make sense. Not logically, but emotionally. When the sea can swallow you without warning, when your diet is dried biscuit and regret, and your bunkmate might have fleas, sometimes you need a little magical insurance. Even if it smells like burnt onions and moldy socks, you find yourself tying a spare piece of twine into a knot. No real reason. Maybe just to feel like you're part of the rhythm now. You tie it 3 times. Tug it once. Then loop it around your wrist. You don't know what it means, but it smells faintly of rosemary and smoke, and tonight maybe that's enough. You wake with your face stuck to a rope coil that smells like mildew and maybe something worse. Your neck cricks, your shirt is damp from sea spray, or sweat, and your mouth tastes like dust and biscuit crumbs. You sit up slowly and notice something odd. The deck is quiet. Too quiet. The usual chorus of curses, clanks, and grumbles is missing. Instead, there's a strange silence, broken only by the creak of wood and the gentle flap of sails. Then it hits you. Bath day. Not the full crew, just a few brave volunteers. If volunteer still means being aggressively shoved toward a barrel with a bucket and a shrug. You shuffle toward the commotion and find 3 shirtless pirates half-heartedly flinging water over themselves from a communal barrel. The water is not fresh. Not even close. Here's your historical fact. Fresh water aboard ships was stored in wooden barrels that were rarely cleaned and often reused. Over time, even the cleanest water turned green, slimy, and alive. Still, it was all they had for drinking and washing. If rainwater didn't come, you just made peace with the floaters. You watch one pirate dump a bucket over his head, then immediately regret it as something gelatinous slides down his back. He screams, swats at it, and then shrugs. Could have been worse. You step closer to the barrel and inhale. Mistake. It smells like seaweed and wet dog. You back up slowly. Historians still argue whether pirate ships had designated cleaning days. Some logs suggest they did. Others say it depended entirely on the mood of the captain and the stink of the crew. Either way, it was rare. Most pirates only bathed when it rained, which explains the wild celebrations you'd see whenever a storm hit. One man is vigorously scrubbing his armpits with what looks like a piece of rope. Another is using sand. A third just sits in the sun, shirt off, hoping evaporation counts as hygiene. You hear laughter above. Someone's climbed into the rigging to avoid the worst of the cleaning frenzy. He's swinging one leg over a line, looking down at the chaos below. "Ain't no soap strong enough for this crew," he shouts, to a round of cackles. And honestly, he's not wrong. There's no soap in sight. Just seawater, elbow grease, and personal interpretation. You spot a crate nearby labeled soap, but when you open it, it's empty except for a single cracked bar that's turned gray-green with age. A pirate picks it up, sniffs it, shrugs, and drops it back in like a museum piece. Fringe tidbit: there are records of pirates making their own ship soap, using animal fat, ash, and seawater. The results were variable. Some say it helped. Others say it smelled worse than before. One diary entry simply calls it the goo that haunts. You're tempted to wash your face in the bucket, just to feel human again. You lean over, scoop a bit with cupped hands, and then stop. There's a hair in it. You back away. Nearby, someone pours rum onto his scalp and rubs it in furiously. Kills lice, he explains. You nod, not because you believe him, but because you're afraid he'll try it on you next. One pirate is rubbing crushed mint and lemon peel under his arms, clearly from the surgeon's mystery stash. He smells better than most, but also vaguely like salad. He seems proud. Another man is airing out his boots. He turns them upside down and bangs them on the railing. A small crab falls out. You lock eyes with it for a moment. It scuttles away in a panic you deeply understand. Historians still debate whether pirate crews prioritized personal hygiene more than naval ones. Naval ships had more structure, yes, but less freedom. Pirates at least had options, even if they didn't use them. Whether you bathed once a week or once a month, one thing stayed consistent: everyone smelled, and not in a unified way. No, each pirate developed his own signature. A blend of sweat, salt, meat, and whatever he happened to spill on himself during mealtime. One man smells like old rope and pickles. Another like tar and despair. You glance toward the laundry line. Yes, there is one, and notice that a few shirts are flapping proudly in the wind. They look cleaner. Not clean. Just less haunted. A shirt falls off the line and lands in a puddle. The owner just sighs and leaves it. You decide to wash your face anyway. You approach a smaller bucket near the bow, where someone's dumped a bit of leftover tea water. You dip your fingers in. It's warm from the sun and vaguely herbal. Probably cleaner than you are. You splash some on your cheeks. It stings. Maybe that's good. You sit back against the railing and breathe deeply. The breeze is faintly laced with mint, sweat, and the unmistakable scent of soggy boots. But for once, it's tolerable. Maybe even nostalgic. Like smelling an old, beloved coat that was never washed but always yours. A pirate walks by, now shirtless and dripping. He grins. Fresh as a sea daisy. You nod. He smells like fish, rum, and confidence. You'll take it. Because on a pirate ship, cleanliness isn't next to godliness, it's next to madness. And some days you're lucky to just smell less bad than usual. It's midday now, and the sun's directly overhead, painting everything in blinding white light and long, melting shadows. The deck boards are hot beneath your feet. Somewhere, someone is frying something in a pan, but given the smell, it's not food, it might actually be leather, and that's when you hear the singing. Not good singing. Not even organized singing. Just voices, low, raspy, off-key, drifting from every part of the ship, like the creaking hull itself has decided to hum. You sit down near the capstan, listening. It's a song about a monkey with a hatchet. You have no idea what the chorus means, and you're not sure the singer does either. But it's oddly soothing. Here's your historical fact. Pirates used music to pass time, boost morale, and mark work rhythms. Sea shanties weren't just entertainment, they were tools. With the right tempo, even the worst chore felt manageable. Haul, heave, hoe, repeat. You watch a group hoisting a sail in time with the beat. One sings. The others grunt along. It's call and response. It's cooperation. It's weirdly catchy, but don't romanticize it too quickly. Because sea shanties? They come with smells. The singer closest to you hasn't bathed in what you suspect is 3 governments. His breath is a mix of onion, rum, and emotional damage. He leans in to shout a verse, and you lean back like your life depends on it. Another pirate claps in rhythm. his hands coated in something sticky from a tar bucket. You notice that every surface nearby has a layer of grime. Even the banter feels dusty. Historians still argue whether pirate crews had designated musicians or just let whoever was drunkest take the lead. Some logs mention fiddlers, drummers, even flutes. One account references a man with 2 wooden spoons and no shame. But instruments were rare. Most songs were purely vocal, and frequently improvised. Which brings us to the current performance, a 7-verse ode to a missing shoe and a particularly vengeful crab. It smells like sweat and hilarity. Nearby, someone bangs on a barrel to keep the beat. The barrel is empty, or maybe not. You hope not to find out. But the hollow thump echoes nicely. Another pirate whistles through his missing front teeth. It gives the tune a haunted, high-pitched harmony, like a ghost got drunk and joined the band. You tap your foot. You don't even realize you're doing it. A group nearby is dancing. Not coordinated, more like enthusiastic wobbling. One slips in a puddle. Everyone laughs. He gets up, bows, and keeps dancing. Fringe tidbit: some pirates believed music could keep the devil at bay, especially on long, stagnant voyages. Singing wasn't just for fun, it was for luck, protection, and distraction from hunger, homesickness, or whatever weird rash they were ignoring this week. You glance at one man slapping his knees to the beat. His legs are covered in bites. Possibly flea. Possibly crab. Possibly both. He doesn't care. He's got rhythm. Someone passes around a bottle. The smell hits you like a wave of syrup and regret. Rum again. Sweet, sticky, and inevitable. Another pirate pulls out what looks like a drum. You realize it's a bucket turned upside down. He plays it with spoons. The spoons are probably not clean, but the beat is solid, and you start to realize this is the cleanest form of joy they have. No bath, no fresh fruit, no soft bed, but for a few minutes they have a chorus. A rhythm. A shared laugh about something no one will remember tomorrow. Maybe that's the point. You try humming along. A pirate hands you a spoon. You tap it against the rail in time. The sound is terrible. You both grin. The song winds down, the last line trailing off into chuckles and coughs. Someone mutters, "Again?" and is met with groans and cheers. You take this chance to sneak away and find some quiet. You end up near the anchor chain, where 2 older pirates sit with closed eyes, swaying slightly. One hums a lullaby, soft, almost tender. The other sips from a cup and sighs like the ocean itself just gave him a foot rub. There's a smell here too, aged rum, wood polish, and salt. It's not bad. It's almost nostalgic. You close your eyes and let the creaking of the ship, the murmured song, and the occasional wheeze of an old sailor's laugh wrap around you like a wool blanket. Historians still debate the origin of most sea shanties. How many came from enslaved African traditions? How many from Irish labor songs? How many just emerged from boredom? But their power was universal. A song could mask hunger. A beat could drown out pain. A chorus could stitch together a dozen lonely men who barely trusted each other, and it could carry over the water, over the stink, over the noise, like a breath of wind in a closed room. You hum again, quietly. You don't know the words. You don't need to. The sky is turning peach and lavender now, the first stars beginning to blink through the veil. You're perched on a barrel near the forecastle, watching shadows stretch and sigh across the deck. It's that rare moment when pirate life almost looks poetic, if you squint hard enough and hold your nose. And speaking of noses, you catch a whiff of something you weren't prepared for, sweet, sharp, floral. You follow it like a cartoon character drifting on scent lines and find its source tucked in a dark corner, a small clay pot steaming gently. Inside, dried petals and orange peel float in hot water. Rosehip tea. Someone mutters from nearby. Old trick. Masks the other smells? You nod. You inhale. And for a second, you're not surrounded by old fish, damp wood, and human ambition, you're in a garden. A slightly moldy garden, yes, but you'll take it. And that brings us to tonight's final horror, the latrine situation. Here's your historical fact. Most pirate ships had no proper toilets. Waste was handled over the side, into buckets, or, if you were unlucky, into the bilge below deck. The smell? Indescribable. But let's try anyway. It's like hot eggs, vinegar, and sea monster breath. You wander cautiously toward the aft, where the seat of ease might be located. This was the polite term for a plank jutting over the side, with a hole cut into it. It offered privacy in the same way a curtain in a wind tunnel might. You peer around. One pirate is already perched there, humming and waving casually. Don't look at me, he grins. I'm doing philosophy. You look away. Quickly, fringe tidbit, pirates sometimes use sand or rope ends as toilet paper. One account mentions soft leaves, which, depending on your location, could be anything from palm fronds to poison ivy. Choose wisely. And what about below deck? Well, sometimes waste buckets were used. Emptied. Regularly. The smell seeped into the timbers, into the hammocks, into your dreams. One visitor to a privateer's ship wrote that the lower hold smelled like Satan's sinkhole. They were being generous. Historians still argue whether some ships enforced cleaning of the latrines. Some captains insisted on a daily rinse. Others? They just hoped the smell kept sharks away. You try not to think about where your boots have been. You head back toward the middle deck, hoping for fresher air, but the wind shifts and sends you a friendly reminder of the ship's shared humanity. It curls in your nose and settles deep into your memory. One pirate walks past holding a bucket, arms straight out, nose wrinkled. He whistles a tune called Dead Man's Luck. You choose not to ask what's in it. You already know. Nearby, someone lights a lantern with a stub of wax. The flame casts warm shadows, and for a moment, the smell of melted tallow masks the rest. It's a brief reprieve. A warm glow. A hint of civilization. You sit back, eyes half-lidded, and let yourself sink into the rhythm again. A man beside you snores gently. His breath smells like onions and rum, with just a hint of salt pork. A woman, yes, there are a few aboard, walks by with a bucket of seawater and a scowl. She's muttering about someone leaving boots too close to the food stores. Again, you ask if it's always like this. She shrugs. You get used to it. Or your brain just gives up. She pours the water onto the deck with a splash, scrubs at a dark stain, and walks away humming. You sit still. Your fingers are sticky from touching a rope earlier. You wipe them on your shirt and regret it immediately. You glance up at the sails. They flap lazily now. The wind is calmer, the sea gentle, and the ship, for all its smells, groans, and strange rituals, is somehow peaceful. That's the trick of pirate life. It's not the adventure, it's the endurance. The ability to laugh when your pants are wet, your soup is crunchy with weevils, and your hammock smells like a dead seal with a grudge. You breathe through your mouth. It helps. Sort of. Fringe fact. There are mentions of pirates scenting themselves with whatever was available. Lavender oil if they had it, citrus peel if they didn't, cloves tucked behind ears. Or, in one infamous case, a stolen bottle of French perfume rationed drop by drop like treasure. The man who owned it smelled like heaven. Until the bottle broke. Then he smelled like despair. As the moon rises, the air cools. The sharpest odors fade to background noise. Your nose, finally defeated, makes peace with its circumstances. You lean your head against the mast and close your eyes. And for a moment you smell nothing at all. Just salt. Just wood. Just silence. Almost. The sun is dipping now, not quite setting, but casting a lazy golden wash across the deck. It softens the shadows and makes the filth look almost romantic, like a painter gently blurring the outlines of reality. Almost thought you're sitting near the stern, nursing the last of someone else's tea. It's cold and slightly metallic, but you're pretending it's mulled cider. Pirates are masters of pretending. You shift slightly and catch a new smell, sharp, sour, unmistakable. Feet. You turn your head, slowly point 2 hammocks over. A man is airing his boots again. His socks are, how to put this, self-aware. One has formed a structure. You wonder briefly if it qualifies for citizenship. It's time we talked about clothing. Here's your historical fact. Pirate crews didn't wear uniforms. Most wore what they brought from their past lives: sailor's garb, merchant rags, stolen finery, and what they looted later. Fashion was functional. If it fit and didn't chafe, you wore it. If it had pockets? Even better. But no matter what it looked like at first, it eventually ended up in the same condition, stained, stiff, and scented like something that crawled into a biscuit barrel and lost hope. That shirt you've been wearing? You thought it was white. It's not. It hasn't been white since week 2. It's a comfortable kind of gray now. A lived-in gray. Don't sniff it. Gray. You pass a pirate carefully sewing the seam of his breeches. He's got a patch ready, torn from a tablecloth, by the look of it. He hums while he works, and his hands are surprisingly delicate, almost dainty. He sees you looking and grins. Better than mooning the crew again. You nod. You remember. Clothes were often mended with whatever fabric was available: sailcloth, old flags, even the lining of a discarded coat. The result? A crew of men dressed like they fell into a laundry fire and crawled out with confidence. One man struts by wearing a waistcoat embroidered with gold thread and a pair of trousers held up by rope. Another has a hat 3 sizes too big, decorated with a dead feather and what might be a beetle. He tips it at you solemnly. Fringe tidbit: pirates occasionally adopted clothing from the people they raided: Caribbean linens, silk from East India men, colorful wraps from West African ports. This made for a fantastically chaotic fashion palette: bright scarves, military jackets, earrings, boots with holes. It also made them smell like 12 different climates at once. You make your way toward the drying line again. A fresh batch of laundry flutters: shirts, sashes, a pair of underwear so patched it resembles a map. The breeze carries their essence: brine, old soap, and desperation. Someone near the line is brushing his coat with a piece of rope. It seems more symbolic than effective. Another is dabbing vinegar behind his ears. Kills the fleas, he mutters. Historians still argue whether pirates used vinegar, tobacco juice, or rum as insect repellent. Evidence suggests they used all 3, sometimes simultaneously. The goal wasn't cleanliness. It was dominance. You sit beside a man who's carefully picking something out of his sock. Lice? You ask. He shakes his head. Beans. You decide not to question it. He offers you a strip of cloth, damp, stiff, and lightly perfumed with lemon peel. Wipe your face, he suggests. You do. It helps. Barely. Another pirate passes by barefoot, toes blackened from tar and sun. He wiggles them proudly. Free ventilation, he says. You wince. Your own boots are starting to protest. Loudly. You loosen them, just to breathe. The air that escapes is enough to stun a passing rat. Fringe fact: boots were rarely removed at sea. Wet socks, cramped toes, and rotting insoles were standard. Taking them off too often risked exposing sores, or worse, admitting you still had toes at all. Pirates kept moving. If your foot fell off, you dealt with that later. You watch as a pirate with only one shoe hobbles by, the other foot wrapped in sailcloth. Better than nothing, he says. Less slippery, too. And remarkably, everyone smells slightly different. Some like oil and leather. Others like old citrus and dirt. One man reeks gloriously of cloves and ash. He tells you he sleeps near the galley, and the smoke masks the stink. That's strategy. Historians still debate whether pirates had codes for personal hygiene. Some ships had rules, no dirty boots in the captain's quarters, for example. But mostly it was peer pressure. If you stank worse than everyone else, you heard about it. Loudly. Probably with gestures. There's a pirate near the bow, shirtless, tattooed, smoking a twist of something green. His pants are striped, his scarf red, and his scent unmistakable, fermented fruit and unbothered confidence. He's made peace with his odors. He probably named them. You sit back against the rail, stretching your legs. Your own clothes are stiff in places they shouldn't be, but the wind is gentle now, and the smells are less aggressive. Or maybe your nose has given up. You scratch at your collar. Something flakes off, you don't want to know. But even in this constellation of fabric, funk, and fantasy, you feel included. Everyone here is disgusting. And together, that's somehow comforting. You adjust your sash. Tie your shirt tighter. Pull your boots back on. You're ready for anything now, even if you smell like it already happened. Night has finally taken over the sky, draping the ship in soft darkness and the silver flicker of moonlight. The stars above are scattered like forgotten breadcrumbs, and the sea is calm, just a slow, rocking cradle of black silk beneath the creaking hull. It should be peaceful. But then the wind shifts, and it hits you again. The bilge. You gag. Quietly. Respectfully. But oh yes, it's time. The bilge is the lowest, darkest, wettest, smelliest part of the ship. A haunted swamp trapped beneath the floorboards. A collection of leaks, spills, runoff, and human contributions. If hell had plumbing, the bilge is where it would back up. Here's your historical fact. The bilge was meant to collect water that seeped into the ship. Rain, seawater, condensation. But over time, it also became the graveyard for rotting food, dropped supplies, spilled oil, and unspoken sins. It had to be pumped out regularly. If neglected, it could sink the ship, or worse, make it unbearable to live above. You watch two unlucky pirates descend into the bilge via a narrow hatch with buckets, lanterns, and faces that say, "We lost a bet." The moment the hatch opens, you swear the air changes color. Thick, damp, and alarmingly warm. Like soup you should never drink. A mixture of rot, mold, seawater, and whatever the cook dropped 2 weeks ago and didn't tell anyone about. One pirate immediately ties a rag over his face. The other just swears loudly and accepts his fate. Fringe tidbit: some pirate ships reportedly had bilge duty, as punishment for breaking ship code. Others rotated the task to prevent mutiny. It was wet, exhausting, humiliating, and oh, it got in your boots. The smell clung to your skin, your nose, your soul. You lean over the hatch for a better look. Mistake. One of the pirates hands you a bucket with a grin. Care to help? You decline, respectfully. Historians still argue whether pirates suffered more bilge issues than merchant ships. Some say pirate vessels, being stolen or hastily repaired, leaked worse. Others argue pirates pumped more frequently, fearing rot and disease. Either way, the bilge was no one's favorite feature. The two men begin bailing water, thick, sludgy water, into buckets, which are then hauled up and dumped overboard. Each splash releases a burst of odor that's half compost, half wet rat. You step back and pretend you're needed somewhere else. Anywhere else. On deck, the others pretend not to notice. A few light pipes to mask the smell, tobacco, herbs, even a twist of something you suspect is shredded sailcloth soaked in molasses. One pirate waves his hat in front of his face like it helps. It does not. You sit beside a crate, nose in your sleeve, and think back on the day. The surgeon's table. The swamp stew. The laundry line. The rosehip tea. The crabs. The ghostly socks. You've experienced every corner of this ship's olfactory landscape. And now? The bilge. You're almost proud. Fringe fact, in a rare moment of ingenuity, some pirates stuffed herbs or citrus peel between the deck planks above the bilge to try and offset the stench. Others just kept rum-soaked cloth under their noses. One diary entry mentions a man who fainted after slipping into the bilge. The crew left him there until he woke up. To teach him a lesson. Apparently, a small rat skitters across the deck. No one flinches. You start to wonder if it's on payroll. One of the bilge men reemerges, drenched and pale. He peels off his shirt and immediately throws it overboard. Not worth saving, he mutters. The second man follows, dripping. He lights a pipe with shaking hands and says nothing. You offer him your tea dregs. He accepts, nods once, and sips. You don't ask for the cup back. The hatch is closed. The smell lingers, but somehow it feels less aggressive. The air is fresher above. The stars twinkle with indifference. The sea rocks the ship gently. And the crew, having survived another day of sweat, stew, superstition, and sewage, begin to quiet down. One by one, hammocks creak under familiar weight. Boots are kicked off. Belts loosened. A few snores rise like early fog. You remain seated a while longer. You sniff the air. Still bad, but manageable. You've reached a strange threshold. The smells don't hurt anymore. They just are. Background noise. A chorus of the unwashed. A perfume of survival. And in this strange floating ecosystem, held together with tar, string, garlic, and refusal, you've found something weirdly beautiful. You smell terrible, and you belong. The night deepens, the stars more numerous now, scattered like spilled salt across black velvet. The moon casts a soft, silvery path across the waves, and the ship drifts along it like a half-forgotten thought. Even the creaking has grown gentler, as if the ship itself is winding down. The air is cooler. Not quite fresh, no, never that, but thinner. The heavier smells have sunk with the heat, leaving just traces. A bit of brine, old rope, wood smoke. Somehow, it's an improvement. Most of the crew is asleep. You step softly across the deck, avoiding hammocks strung between masts, boots left out to air, and one man who's snoring into a coil of rope like it's a feather pillow. You pause near the galley, drawn by a strange scent, sweet, spicy, almost inviting. You peek inside. There's a small pot bubbling on the coals. Not stew this time. Something more indulgent. Pudding, says a voice from the shadows. It's the cook, cross-legged on a sack of flour, stirring lazily with the same spoon he used for everything. Made it with the last of the figs and some moldy bread. He offers you a taste. You hesitate, then accept. It's weirdly good. Warm, sweet, and just enough cinnamon to remind you you're still alive. You nod in thanks, and he smiles like it's the greatest compliment he's ever received. Here's your historical fact. Pirate cooks often made duff, or pudding, from stale biscuit, dried fruit, animal fat, and whatever sweeteners they could steal or trade for. It wasn't elegant, but it was comfort food, and the smell, compared to everything else, was divine. You take a second bite, slower this time. You close your eyes. Behind you, someone hums a lullaby in a language you don't recognize. It drifts over the deck, winding between the rigging and resting gently on your shoulders. You carry the bowl back to your spot near the stern and sit. Fringe tidbit. Pirates believed eating something sweet before sleep warded off bad dreams. Whether it worked or not, no one knows, but considering their lives, it couldn't hurt. Below deck, the bilge has finally quieted. Even its stench seems to have settled. One by one, the lanterns are snuffed. The only light now comes from the moon and a few embers. The man beside you stirs, mutters something about flying fish, and rolls over. His hammock creaks, but he doesn't fall out. Progress. Historians still argue whether pirates dreamed more vividly than others. Maybe it was the strange mix of fear, rum, and sea air. Maybe it was sleeping beside enemies and friends alike, rocking gently over fathoms of cold mystery. You finish the pudding and set the bowl aside. The sweetness lingers in your mouth, the saltiness in your skin. The day behind you, loud, filthy, hilarious, fades slowly into the silence. Somewhere, a gull cries once. Then nothing, and you let yourself rest. Your hammock welcomes you like an old friend, scratchy, mildly damp, but familiar. You swing gently with the ship. You close your eyes, you smell salt, smoke, bread, tar, lemons faintly. You've become part of it, not a visitor. A crew member. You'll stink again tomorrow, and that's okay. Because on this ship, under this sky, in this wild, reeking, stubborn little world, that means you made it. Now the sails hang still, catching nothing but moonlight, and the deck has gone quiet at last. You lie back in your hammock, the worn canvas creaking ever so slightly beneath you. Somewhere, soft snoring rises and falls like a tide, half a dozen pirates breathing in rhythm with the sea. Your limbs feel heavy, weighted by salt and sun and the sheer effort of existing in a world that smells like survival. But that heaviness is good. It means your body is finally letting go. A breeze passes through the rigging. It carries the scent of rope and wood and maybe, just maybe, a distant island. You don't lift your head to look. You just breathe in. The lanterns are out now. The stars are the only light. They wink gently above you, far from the bilge, far from the fish stew, far from the stained shirts and the muttered curses and the overshared buckets. You let your eyes drift closed. And no more oaths or orders. And no more garlic in boots. And no more crab in socks. Just the sea. Just the stars. Just the soft sigh of canvas and the slow, patient rocking of the hull beneath you. You did it. You endured the stink, the stew, the strange habits of very strange people. And somehow, you found your place here. You don't need to dream tonight. The world you drifted through was wild enough. So exhale one last time. Let your shoulders sink, and let the gentle stink of pirate history carry you all the way to sleep.